Let's talk to Andrew Griffith MP, Shadow Business Secretary. Andrew, very good morning to you. I don't know whether you share my pessimism about the outlook in this country, but things are looking pretty awful right now, and we're calling it Awful April because everything's going up and people haven't really got the money to pay for it all.
Good morning, Mike. It's always good to be at the home of common sense. And it is awful April. You're absolutely right. Everybody's going to be sitting here looking at their bills. Everything feels like it's increasing. And a large part of that, the part that the government is responsible for, is the increase in tax. What they're doing is putting up the cost of employing everybody. And remember that cost is in almost everything we do, whether it's a nursery, a hospice, or a business. Businesses are desperately trying to make ends meet, and that's the reason why we're seeing so many price rises. Ultimately, as Conservatives have always said, it's consumers, it's all of us that end up paying the burden for those tax rises. And if you're Rachel Reeves and you come on in and you raise taxes by £40 billion a year, then sure as God made little apples, they're going to cascade through the economy and end up on those bills that consumers are opening now.
Yeah, absolutely incredible stuff. I mean, it turns out as well, at the same time as all of these bills are coming in, the Taxpayers Alliance have very helpfully given us a guide to what is going to be, what certainly council tax money is being spent on. 238 members of various different councils making more money than the Prime Minister, who's on £172,000 a year. I mean, it's not sustainable for these council leaders to be paid this much money, is it? £500,000 here, 400,000 quid there?
Well, thank God for the Taxpayers Alliance. They do fantastic work at exposing the bloated cost of the state, a cost that's, a burden on the hard-working shoulders of every man and woman in this country. And they make a very good example again today with the number of top bosses in the public sector. Now, my biggest issue, Mike, is not their pay. That's an issue. But the biggest issue is their failure to perform. And so many people, if they were on performance-related pay, like many people in the private sector, would be going home with empty pockets, because we see in Birmingham bins not being collected, rat infestations in the street. We see that our government and public services are painfully slow at actually getting things done, the job that they're paid to do, and too many of them are not actually turning up for work in the first place. The problem for that is that all of us pay the price. Even the left-leaning Resolution Foundation has been talking about how Rachel Reeves' decisions is going to cost 85,000 people their job. Now, that is a number that, imagine Wembley Stadium full of people. That is the additional number of people who will be made unemployed as a result of decisions that the government has made. And the National Insurance Jobs Tax comes in over the weekend. Not too late. The government could still wake up this morning and change their mind and not put that burden, which ultimately all of us will be paying for, in higher bills. I mean, Rachel Reeves came out and said earlier this week, did she not, that basically we're going to be £1,000 better off by the time the next round of elections comes on in sort of 2029. But I mean, you've done some research in the Conservative Party that says actually working families are going to be £3,500 worse off because of Labour and what they've done in this Parliament. Listen, if you believe what Rachel Reeves says about making people better off, Mike, there's a bridge behind me that I'd be very happy to sell you after the show. Look, the reality is, as Conservative figures released today show, the working families will be £3,500 worse off over the life of this government. But that's just the start of it. The 300-page red tape, job-destroying employment rights bill is sadly going to put many people out of work. And the catastrophic news overnight, if confirmed, that the UK is going to end up on the receiving end of tariffs. The Prime Minister should be coming to Parliament this afternoon to explain himself and what his plan is. And regrettably, the Chancellor is going to have to do another emergency budget, potentially as early as next week, to explain the fact that the budget she did last week hasn't even lasted the full week because of her failure to put in any sensible headroom or to take into account the risk of tariffs. It's extraordinary, isn't it? They don't seem to know as well, despite the fact that Keir Starmer keeps kind of making out that his relationship
relationship with Donald Trump is great, and he keeps talking to him, and he keeps kind of, you know, touching him on the shoulder and stroking his face and all the rest of it. We don't seem to have a clue what's happening when it comes to the tariffs that are going to be put on Britain.
This government has not a clue, and the failure to secure a deal for the United Kingdom will be the most devastating failure of trade policy for a generation.
Yeah.
They got rid of Crawford Falconer, the respected UK trade negotiator. They replaced Ambassador Pierce with a political appointee in Washington, and a fat lot of good that seems to have done. Our UK Trade Secretary took 5 months before getting on a plane and sitting down for face-to-face talks. If I was the Trade Secretary, I would have been on the plane the next day after the US election and camped out in Mar-a-Lago until I got a deal to protect British jobs, British workers and the British economy. The government's done none of those things. We're looking down the barrel of real uncertainty. 20% of our car exports alone go to the United States, and this government has no plan. When they negotiate, Britain loses.
And they've also got this ridiculous kind of, I don't know whether they're deluding themselves or whether they're just trying to convince us of something that it's not true. Front page of The Sun today, Soft Touch UK. You've got people coming in from Albania, dinghy migrants, bragging about getting free hotel rooms, talking about how great it is coming to Britain because everything gets handed on a plate to you. And meanwhile, we've got day 2 of an emergency sort of, you know, migrant summit going on, immigration summit in London. And Keir Starmer keeps telling us that they're getting a handle on it and they're deporting more and more people and everything's going really well.
It's all words and not action with this government, and we see that whether it's on immigration, at a time that the highest number of small boat arrivals are coming to this country, whether it's on trade, where they've talked about a plan but they clearly have not delivered, or whether it's about that most important thing, Mike, economic growth, where they talk the language of growth, but they're not actually hacking back the cost of the state, and all of the measures they're actually taking, whether it's putting up more burdens of red tape on business, pushing up business rates, increasing taxes on employment, are all going in a direction that is diametrically opposite. I'm afraid it really is all talk with this government, and as a patriot, it is desperately sad to see people leaving our country because they think they will get a better life elsewhere. This should be one of the best places, the best countries to live on the planet. We have a proud history that we should all celebrate, and yet young people in particular are leaving this country because they think they will get a better life and more opportunities elsewhere.
Yeah, it is absolutely shocking. Andrew, good to talk to you. Thanks very much indeed. Andrew Griffith, MP. Apologies for the sound of blowing wind there. Shadow Business Secretary.